Give me less than 10 minutes and I'll give you the whole messy business of CM Punk, the Elite, and the intolerance at the press conference. Now, it started back in May on Dynamite with a face-to-face between CM Punk and Adam Page. Hangman allegedly took some microphone liberties, alluding to the past problems between Punk and Scott Colt Cabana Colton, and how Punk seems less concerned with workers' rights, something he was very passionate about. Now he's back in the wrestling fold. A seemingly innocuous line that really riled up Punk, one that Hangman Page didn't apparently apologize for making. We move forward to Punk's triumphant return from injury and his confusing first decision to call out Hangman Page, something not choreographed for his comeback creative. Page, who wasn't scheduled to be part of that particular segment, didn't do the heroic wrestler run-in as everyone expected, and CM Punk called him a coward before moving on to his true target, Jon Moxley. Hashtag awkward. They did a little skit on Being the Elite to kind of explain it. We all move on. We go to All Out and CM Punk regaining the AEW title after defeating Jon Moxley. A hard-fought battle that saw Punk land a tope that seemed to tweak his arm or maybe his elbow. Hey, regardless, the match finished as planned. Punk is the champ once more. We didn't know it at the time, but the main event of Tony Khan's Carnival of Clotheslines was about to take place. CM Punk, armed with a carrier bag of cold beverages and a box of locally sourced muffins, proceeded to lay out all the details of his fallout with Colt Cabana. Having grown tired of people asking questions about it, he just brought it up on the fly. He went into detail about paying Colt Cabana's bills during their legal dispute with WWE's Dr. Chris Amann, and how, when he stopped paying them, Cabana sued him back. The lawsuit was dropped and the matter was seemingly closed, but Punk alleged that the EVPs of AEW had been stirring the pot when it comes to contentious relationships between Punk and Cabana, and this led to some believing that Punk's arrival in AEW led to Colt Cabana being moved to Ring of Honor. As a result of these alleged rumors, Punk levels the EVPs of AEW as children who couldn't run a Target. We don't have Target stores in the UK, so I initially thought that Punk was claiming that Omega and the Young Bucks would have a rough time running an archery club. He turns his attention to Adam Page after this, referring to Hangman as empty-headed for going into business for himself during that now bizarrely infamous promo, and taking great issue with Page claiming that he didn't need advice from anyone in AEW. These comments strangely planned, according to alleged by Dave Meltzer of Wrestling Observer Radio. As all this is going on, though, Tony Khan is quietly sat next to him, nodding along like the Churchill dog, with a look of Homer Simpson hedge.gif. Doesn't sit completely silent, though, to be fair. No. He apologizes to CM Punk a few times before asking if he can have one of his drinks. Punk leaves and the press conference goes on. But behind the scenes, all is far from well. Reports start coming out of an altercation and a melee in the locker room between CM Punk and Ace Steel, as well as the EVPs of AEW, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, and a few other choice characters. Have you ever seen the movie Rashomon? Right? It's the film where all the characters have a different interpretation of the same story, all adamant that their version is the correct one. Whilst Kurosawa's masterpiece reveals that they're all lying, this is a slightly different twist on that in a wrestling world. The fallout from All Out varies depending on who you ask. Some say that the Elite calmly entered the locker room where CM Punk was getting changed in the company of Ace Steel and his dog Larry, and Punk almost immediately starts swinging for them. Other reports say that Omega and the Bucks either literally, metaphorically, or kind of sort of kicked the locker room door down and went in with designs on a dust-up. When fists started flying between Matt and Nick Jackson, Punk and Steel, Omega, according to one report, allegedly took the initiative to get Larry the dog out of the room. He's merely an innocent bystander in all of this and was presumably in line for a big push next time they do the AEW Puppy Battle Royale. Now, a few other reports have similarities to them. They all insist that a chair was thrown and that Ace Steel decided to bite Kenny Omega in the chaos. I'm sure Larry would have done it if you'd asked him to. The fracas was placated soon after that. In fact, during Keith Lee and Swerve's bit of the press conference, there's an angle where you can see security personnel rushing backstage to sort it all out. At least I think that's what they were doing. Either that or they really needed a wee. As AEW All Out drew to a close, nobody was talking about the dramatic return of MJF to the promotion, ironically being built since his own dramatic incident months before, but it was all about the backstage brawl between Punk and the Elite. Now, in the days that followed, speculation was rife about whether this was for real or if AEW were once again playing to the media section. If it was a worky work, why do it at the expense of your hottest talent returning? If it was a shooty shoot, how would the parties be punished? Now, the Wednesday following the press conference from Hell, Sports Illustrated broke the news of how that would go down. A forecast was a wide scattering of suspensions for every person involved in the fracas. The names included Kenny Omega, Matt and Nick Jackson, Pat Buck, Christopher Daniels, Michael Nakazawa, and Brandon Cutler. Also, an external third-party investigation would be conducted to examine what really happened that night. But what about Ace Steel and CM Punk? There was no mention of the fate that awaits them by Sports Illustrated. That would come to light later in the day. It was revealed that Punk, Steel, and Tony Khan would take to Zoom to discuss the situation. Punk entered the Zoom room not from Buffalo, New York, but from Chicago, where Dynamite was emanating from. Why was he home? Well, that's another wrinkle to this story. Remember what I said about Punk seemingly tweaking his arm or his elbow? Well, multiple sources would reveal this to be a torn triceps, meaning that whatever the outcome punishment-wise for CM Punk, he would be out of action for a long time. Triceps injuries can take 8 months of rest and rehab, something now on the cards for the new world champion. Once they ended the Zoom call and presumably all parties waved for too long whilst Tony Khan tried to find the end call button without looking down, an AEW talent meeting was led by Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho, who earned some plaudits from the locker room for his decorum during the chaos on Sunday, where we understand in this meeting there was an update on the parties involved and new creative plans were fleshed out. We learned those plans on Dynamite just a few hours later. The show opened without Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and CM Punk in the title card. Tony Khan announced moments later that the AEW World Championship and the AEW World Trios Championship were now vacant. No explanation as to why or any reference to the previous champions. Now, the following day, Wrestling Observer broke the news that we kind of all expected to read. Ace Steel was off the road from AEW and CM Punk was suspended. This, tied with his triceps injury, will mean that CM Punk won't be part of AEW's plans for some time to come. Whilst it initially looked like CM Punk could be fired from the company following the altercation, sources say that he'll likely remain with All Elite Wrestling but be away from the promotion until at the earliest the summer of 2023. However, that is up in the air a little bit on whether he'll return or not. Sentiment backstage is not good, as according to Dave Meltzer, if he was not let go, a lot of people don't want him back. There's already a lot of divisiveness when it comes to Punk. He was already rubbing people up the wrong way. And from Punk's standpoint, says Dave Meltzer, he was trying to teach these guys how to draw money and how to do stuff, trying to give them good advice, and he was very frustrated. There were people who were listening and there were people who weren't listening. So the backstage area is a pretty divisive one, leaning more towards an anti-Punk sentiment than a pro one right now, at least. Time will most definitely tell when it comes to this particular situation. The dust will settle, and wounds of a more metaphorical nature will have plenty of time to heal over the next 8 months. Tony Khan will definitely need to look to find the root cause of any locker room unrest if he wishes to continue to grow All Elite Wrestling as a major house of graps. For now, though, AEW will carry on with question marks over their EVPs and an asterisk over CM Punk. Stay safe. Love you. Bye.